Look around the papers today, and it's clear the big political story this week is the continued fallout from the migrant border crossing in Ceuta last week. It's week 32. I'm Amos Miller, and this is the Danish Press Review. Christiansborg sits more than 2,500 kilometers from the North African Spanish Exclave of Cueta. But that hasn't prevented the events that occurred there last Thursday from dominating the discussions in Danish politics this week. Last Thursday, Ceuta, a Spanish exclave on the northern coast of Africa, was inundated with at least 40,000 migrants who swam around barriers and crossed the border with Morocco unchecked. The episode was quickly handled by Spanish authorities, with the vast majority of migrants being sent back to Morocco. However, the political fallout may prove to be more lasting. Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen almost immediately joined far-right Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni in condemning Spain for its immigration policy and calling for Spain to be excluded from the EU's Schengen Agreement, guaranteeing free movement. The speed with which Frederiksen reacted to the news has led to recriminations from the press, the opposition, and difficulties within her own government. In Wednesday's edition of Information, Lasse Skue Andersen and Anton Geist provide a withering critique of the Prime Minister's response. As migrants streamed into Ceuta, Danish politicians raced to act like Italy's Giorgia Meloni. What exactly it was she wanted faded away. Andersen and Geist point out that Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez immediately came to Denmark's defense when U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to take Greenland by force. When Spain's territory was threatened on Thursday, Frederiksen instead blamed Sanchez. At the time, Sanchez said, "Respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity is crucial for the EU and for all the world's countries," noting that Spain had full solidarity with Denmark and Greenland's people. What started as a call for Spain's exclusion from the Schengen zone quickly melted into Italy temporarily increasing its border security with incoming Spanish flights and ships, something well within the rules of the Schengen Agreement. Andersen and Geist point out the contradiction between the immediate press release and the actual result, noting, "Under all circumstances, this is completely different than throwing a country out of Schengen." Speaking about Frederiksen, she prioritized profiling herself as an immigration hawk to Danish voters over showing solidarity with Spain and supporting European unity, which a small country like Denmark has need of in a time when Trump threatens the kingdom. The question is, will Pedro Sanchez still be inclined to back up the Danish government the next time Denmark has need of support? On Tuesday, immigration officials met in Brussels to discuss the Ceuta crossings. Immigration Minister Morten Bødskov came back from the meeting in which the collective decision included nothing about Spain's inclusion in Schengen, but did point out that the episode had been jumped on by foreign actors. As Michael Thykier in Politiken and Lisa Sidelin in Kristi Dagblad report, Bødskov claims that Russian-backed social media accounts used the content to drive a wedge between European allies. Bødskov to Politiken. And the message has been completely aligned, precisely that the EU's border cooperation has collapsed, the EU was being invaded by Muslims, and that the EU was in discord with itself, and that chaos was playing out in Europe. In comments to Kristi Dagblad, Bødskov notes, "This is the first time we've so clearly seen that refugee streams are being used in the hybrid war that we know Russia supports at the moment." In the pages of Berlingske, editor-in-chief Tom Jensen backs up the idea of throwing Spain out of the Schengen Agreement. "Spain is Europe's open hole. It should be closed now. Sanchez should guarantee that these illegal immigrants cannot subsequently move freely around Europe. If the Spanish government won't do it, it's necessary for the EU to suspend the Schengen Agreement for Spain until they have corrected the situation." In non-Ceuta-related news, Børsen has an article about how Research, Education, and Digitization Minister Christina Egelund has invited the development of an AI data center on Danish land. Denmark has committed to paying for 750 million kroner worth of computing power from one of 7 new AI gigafactories on European ground. The EU is attempting to build up their data center capacity to provide independence from American and Chinese computing power in relation to AI usage. Denmark has already agreed to pay for 750 million kroner worth of computing power, and according to Elund, we have agreed to a two-part deal, where we both have said that we would like to be a part of a gigafactory, for example in Finland, but also that one could be placed in Denmark. The reason for the deal is so that Danish researchers and businesses get a guarantee on a portion of computing power, which is crucial for the development and training of artificial intelligence. But the new plan is also encountering some pushback. Brit Ross Winthereik, a professor in digital infrastructure at DTU, believes a giga data center in Denmark could threaten a stable and green energy grid. A new AI gigafactory will use large energy quantities. It therefore requires a plan where you lay out the entire puzzle about where it will be placed, how it will connect to the energy grid, and what energy sources it will use, among other pieces. Elund sees the climate question differently. From a climate perspective, there's no reason to hide that it requires a lot of energy. But the alternative to building them in Denmark or Europe is to be forced to buy computing power from other places in the world. And that requires just as much energy. That's it for week 32 of the Danish Press Review. See you next week.